going on? Alrighty. Cool. So first stream of the new year. I hope you all have plans, maybe? Experiments to run, possibly. More to do. More to want to get done, maybe. I don't know, it's different for everybody. But for me, I would really like to kind of get this game out in the wild. So for those who don't know, the other folks, we're all here. I am currently working on Distal, a high fantasy D20 class heavy. I'm saying this backwards. Tabletop role-playing system. It's in the vein of Dungeons and Dragons, so should feel very familiar to those of you who've played that before, played Pathfinder. And regardless of whether you played 5e or 3.5, actually you'll see some elements of 4e as well, which I didn't play. But I hear good things now that we've kind of come full circle with how we feel about TTRPGs. But been doing a lot of work. The next alpha packet is so drastically different that, well, I say that, but I don't know who would actually notice outside of my extremely long patch notes. And I think that the game is finally figuring out what it wants to be. So originally, Distal was just a game that I wanted to make on the side, kind of to flex some creative muscle and also build for people who already play D&D. And that's what they're used to. It's what they're familiar with. They haven't branched out too far from it. And I enjoy D&D. But I also have some problems with it. I think that's where the impetus for a lot of game development comes from. Is like, I like that. Also, I think I could do it maybe not better, but certainly differently. Something to suit my particular tastes. So Distal in particular, and I'm going to go through and kind of just walk through some of the packet information, because I'll speak a little bit on the design kind of as we walk down through it. But if you all have, this is in Affinity, so you're seeing this raw, hold on, where's my face? Okay. Affinity Publisher is what I'm using to write all that. Well, Google Docs is what I use to write the majority of the documentation. But when it comes to formatting it, when it comes to making a lot of changes, I do it right in Affinity, which is publishing software. So if you're unfamiliar with publishing software, it's less about, it's not really a word processor in a sense that it's not meant to help you formulate good sentences, keep good grammar, and all that sort of thing. It's meant to allow you to format the stuff that you've already generated and distill it into either a digital PDF or book format or what have you. So, or I can use this for like creating flyers and stuff too. Anywho, yeah, Affinity is great. I love it. I used to use InDesign, and Affinity is, it was so easy for me to pick up compared to InDesign. I just kept stumbling all over that, and it's not like I'm unfamiliar with it. I just don't like some of the quirks. Anywho, so ended up creating some new art for Distal. I say art with finger quotes because I'm not an artist, but I can do a little bit. And this is kind of what I ended up with to start. Like I can't do stuff that's detailed. So this is all silhouettes with like the lasso tool, and it's like filling stuff in. And then you have some brushes, like stamp brushes with that you'd pull off of, Envato or whatever. And stamp in the grass, the right things, text, add some pizzazz, do some gradient overlays to kind of fill the space. Ended up with a few different versions of this, and I couldn't really decide on one. So ended up throwing this to the Discord, which if you would like to join, it's come hang out, talk shop, whatever. It's really docile in there. A little bit too quiet for my tastes, actually. But some of the discussion is good. And if you're interested in TTRPGs in general, then feel free to hang out and share some of those thoughts too. But the majority of development is shared within the Discord. And if you want to do that, or join it rather, you can go to playdisrpg.com, and I'll put the link in the chat as well, though you'll see it everywhere. But yeah, feel free, if you're not already in the Discord, feel free to hang out. Anywho, so we're moving into alpha version 4. The changes are numerous, and the testing is less than I tend to do. Our weekly home game, the holidays happen, and also we're trying to do an actual play, like on the top of everything else. So the next episode of that is recorded. It was supposed to land today, but there's not enough hours in the day for me to do all the stuff that I want to do. So hopefully I'll get it out next week. And the first actual play has us create characters, and I walked everybody through that process. There's 3 guests on with us, and you can kind of see how that process goes. And we also talk a little bit about the design of Distal as well, which some of the changes that we talk about in that actual play have made their way into this particular document. So those people don't even have, or the guests rather, don't even have this document yet because it's still heavily work in progress. And they're probably not watching the stream, so you can see this stuff before they do. But let's see. So I have an overview page at the start and kind of talk through some of the quirks, but actually I guess I'll cover some of the mechanical differences in Distal compared to other RPGs. So when it comes to, also hello Henry. When it comes to developing in Distal in particular, I'm a big fan of mechanics. I love game design in general. And some of you who know my background probably understand where that comes in, but tinkering and playing with numbers and just making things is something that really gets my blood pumping. So you'll see a lot of changes. This isn't a 5e derivative. It's totally something separate. So, but fundamentally, mechanical differences from 5e. We do things like we create our backgrounds from filling in prompts. We have permanent death in this game that is achieved kind of over time. So you can kind of have near-death experiences that stack up over and over and over, and then begin to wear down your character until they decide to retire, or until they finally, embrace the forever winter. There's no resurrection spells in the game, though. If you wanted to homebrew some, it would totally make sense in this particular world, just given the setting. It's just not as a base. When you get knocked down, when somebody throws you a heal, you don't pop right back up. That's something that annoyed the crap out of me in D&D. I like there to be consequence for your actions so that you think more tactically about the decisions that you're making, and hopefully try to keep people up before they drop instead of waiting until they drop and then picking them up after. Our proficiencies are totally separate from your core attributes. The classes are very specific, yet they're specific, diverse, and then they branch into, they're not locked to a particular role. They lean different directions, but you can kind of play them in a bunch of different ways. And then the weapon arsenal is totally diverse and very specific, unlike 5e that is more like generic. They give you templatized sort of weapons. They give you a longsword, but longsword can be like a katana or, whatever type of longsword you would think of. And then that's just the damage that it does. This game has more specific weapons. So a longsword versus a short sword, well, that's a bad example, versus a dueling sword or whatever, like all of those would be drastically different or significantly different. Willpower is a limited resource that allows you to kind of close out fights quicker. So one of the benefits of willpower is that if you roll to, you make an attack, you roll to hit. If you don't hit, every class has a willpower die that you can say like, okay, I'm going to use one of my willpower, and then you roll that die, add the total to your output, and then you can potentially hit the target. So there's ways to resolve failure, or rather reverse failure, but it costs resources. And then animal companions have plot armor. There's so much more that's different than that, but those are some beats that I kind of keyed in on. This hasn't changed all that much from the early days. But character sheets, these are actually going to get reworked a little bit to support some of the new features that are in the next update. Things like we don't track weight anymore. Weight is a column down here, and you'd kind of like fiddle with it. It's been kind of abstracted. Supply is no longer a thing at all. Weight capacity is going to be something that's a little bit different, easier to digest. And then the way that willpower is done is probably needs to be rephrased too. It works for our purposes, but anywho, I made this originally in Google Docs as a spreadsheet, and then took it into Canva, fleshed it out, and I think it turned out pretty okay. Let's look at. Okay, so in our in Distal, which actually I'm going to do something in real time here and throw on some borders to make this pretty for me. Hold on. Gonna apply a master and add the new borders, which are just super simple. Oh no. Does it cover up my stuff? What? Okay, wow. Hold on, let me. I'm debugging in real time. Oh, I cleared all the data. Hold on. I got this. Sorry, hold on. This is happening. Oh, I guess I have to keep on doing things. Okay. Maybe it's not happening. Yeah, I don't think it's a layer order thing, Henry. I think I just cleared the okay. It's not supposed to replace existing. That's the thing. I just need to just add it on the top. So boom, there you have it. Silly me. But yeah, so now you have the page numbers more prominent. It's very minimalistic border at this point. I'm probably going to spruce it up. It's less than I had before. Anybody who knows the past document, I was doing a lot more with color and stuff, but I'm just kind of trying to move into cleaning things up a little bit, but it's it's kind of boring. Anywho, so as far as lineage, we kind of mix your standard fare for like a Gygaxian Tolkien fantasy in with some newer elements. So there's a level of familiarity and kind of pushing the borders. When it comes to the new stuff, it's not really new. This has been done in a lot of different places, but something that I enjoy particularly is like the Atlian, who are more like Triton, less like Merfolk. We have dwarves, elves, standard stuff. Fury, which are like harpies, but more kind of modernized and acclimated to society. And then the Kinsguard, which are humans, but they are the lineage of humans that you'll be playing. Kinsguard in particular are like the remnants of a fallen empire, and that's who you kind of jump in the world as. Sort of like when you play, Redguard versus... What are the Nords? Are they just Nord? In Elder Scrolls? Can't remember. Tanglefolk are your Hobbit / Halfling equivalents, except they're more like Quicklings, because they're just booking it. They're wicked fast. 35 movement. Ulstadr, which are a race of giants, and they're kind of like lanky, and the legs are long, arms are long, and the torso is kind of just a little bit compressed, but humanoid still. A Wild Walker are half beast type creatures. They're blessed, slash cursed, depending on what you believe, but they can transform into animals. And then Eve, which are kind of human, except they have 3 eyes. They are elemental, like their blood is like elemental, and they look like Eris Morn from Destiny 2. That's the most like, yes, that's it. So not like Genasi in 5e. They are totally more like Eris Morn. And then your background. So this, you think they're just Nords? Yeah, Henry, that makes sense. I think there's one more. Breton, I think, are another one. But yeah, so playing like specific humans instead of just like human. It's so boring. It's like, where's the culture? Where's the fun stuff that I can like grab onto and build a story around? Anyway, so writing a background is one of the first things that you do in the game now. It used to be saved to like after your class selection, but now you go through and work through these prompts to kind of outline what happened in your past life, the hardships, the traumas that you've endured, and it can get, pretty crazy. We encourage you to roll through these tables, though it's totally cool if you want to pick the prompts, but you roll it up, and then you'll end up with a character that you probably don't expect. Actually, let me do this real quick in a real time, if I can get a dice roller here. Actually, you know what? I'm not gonna get a dice. Do I have dice? I don't have dice on me. Okay, well, never mind. Never mind. It's fine. We'll just go through. But yeah, so like in order to create a background, you'll start with a sentence. I grew up, roll, and see what you get. You might have grown up surrounded by death. What does that mean? These are the things that you get from it. So it kind of like alludes to some situations that might have occurred because of it, but maybe you were in maybe just grew up like next to the graveyard and you constantly saw people, making their final exit off of the distal plane. Or maybe you could have grown up in a war zone, or maybe you grew up in a village where everybody was just kind of like sickly and poor, and you see your friends and family kind of dying. Maybe you end up coming into contact, just for the sake of survival, with some unscrupulous people. Then you keep going. So let's see. I grew up surrounded by death and my days were spent. What were my days spent doing? 3 separate tables, because there's 30 different options. You'll roll up and say like, okay, dissuading troublemakers. So because of your past, like how did that shape you? Maybe you're like a bodyguard at some sort of skeezy club, or maybe you had like a little brother who you needed to take care of, or maybe you lost them and you like look after people now because of all the death that you saw prior to, and this is kind of just formed as part of your personality. Then we'll go to I became. This is just to give you items. That's whether you're you became an adventurer, nomad, sellsword, hero, villain, doesn't matter. It does, there's some flavor to it, but we even say in a dev note here to where it's more important for you to pick the get the loadout that you want, because that'll be important for the character depending on what you're kind of aiming for. And you can keep the prompt if you want to be a nomad. Say you abandoned your old life and then had to move on to something new. But if you wanted to pick the stuff that Sword has, just as an example, that'd be totally legit. So we have different tiers of pricing for items, and then there's actual gold costs too. One of the new things that happened in this particular update is that everybody gets 2 weapon proficiencies off the top now. A common point of concern was that some characters would end up with just a single weapon proficiency, and it felt limiting. So you can end up with more than 2. And actually, if you went with Soldier, you could pick up 3 right off the bat. But heroes and villains are equally equipped. Hashtag foreshadowing. Totally. Absolutely. So you have... oh, and then also curios are something that was added in this update as well. And this is... I'll talk about it in a bit. But I'm really excited. Totally ripped it from the One Ring RPG, because it's a mechanic that I was enamored with. It's probably one of the coolest things that I've seen. And it's such a small little mechanic. But let's see. So then we go, what'd you become? You became a nomad, for example. The day I failed someone I cared about, or maybe it was the day I foiled an assassination attempt. Probably gets you in good with with some sort of aristocrat. And all of these factors, this background that you've built now, can help inform your character story. It gives you something, a basis, that can take many different paths. There's many ways to interpret the prompts that you're given, but it's more specific than just like a single word, like a spark table, is that what they're called? Yet not meant to be too restrictive. So it's trying to find that line between inviting imagination while creating structure. And then we give an example of some stuff. After that, you're going to take all the stuff that you got from your background and then start piecing it together. One thing that has changed in this update is that investigation has become deduction. It's a subtle change, but here's the reasoning for it. Skills are the things you do. Knowledge is the things that are the things that you know. And usually a roll will be you're rolling for a skill and then you add a relevant knowledge. But there wasn't actually a skill before that was like recalling knowledge. In D&D, you just make a history check and that's it. But since the basis for checks in this game, skill checks rather, are do the thing and then add some specialty knowledge, there needed to be something that was like recalling information or putting the pieces together. And that's that subtle change between like investigation, which is like, okay, searching for specific information, which is often interchanged with perception anyway, decided to kind of, instead of like, okay, looking for specific information, deduction is more like, okay, what's the evidence? What are my past experiences? How do I interpret things because of that? So instead of like looking to the future, you're kind of like, it's more retrospective, and that it's a really subtle change. It'll still be used like investigation a lot, but words matter. And that was the one that I kind of settled on. Who knows, maybe in a few months it'll be different. And then you have a bunch of, your knowledge. So trying to kind of give a bunch of different topical areas without giving you like history. It's like, okay, well, all history, all things. It's probably, I don't know, some of that stuff about D&D was like, okay, that's a little bit of a stretch. So I tried to be a little bit more specific, but always make it useful. Because if it's a skill that you just never touch, then what's the point of having it? Let's see. And then you'll pick up some bonuses or bonus skills and information, or rather knowledge from your wisdom and intelligence. And then you acquire curios. So if you picked up a curio from your background, what you get is like a quirky little plot item that is of personal interest to your character. So if you create a character and you'll come up with a background for them, just like in D&D, and you'll say like, oh, they have this family heirloom or whatever that they're really attached to. Maybe it's like a music box or something that reminds them of their family or like earlier days or something. We take that concept and turn it into a tangible item that benefits the story mechanically whenever it makes sense. So strictly non-combat, and just whenever you make a skill check that makes a reasonable use of that item, you can reroll. So you basically get advantage. So examples are like, okay, a pouch of rare spices. So aid checks made while like cooking for others. You dump in your secret the spices that you've gotten from wherever, and they give you a little benefit to the roll. Or maybe it's like a family signet ring, maybe coming from an aristocratic background, and the signet ring is like something that others would acknowledge, or that you can kind of like flaunt a little bit. Maybe that would help you speak or kind of like levy your political influence over aristocratic families in the local area. So they're meant to be specific enough for it to be mostly flavor. And again, it's non-combat. So, and you make up whatever this is. So it's like sky's the limit. I didn't want to give you a table specifically for this, though it could have. I love tables. But the point is to give you an idea, and you've already gone through and created your background. So now you think, okay, what would my character like? What would I have gotten from that moment that I've held on to? And hopefully at this point, you maybe have some idea of what that might be. So the reason that I say this is ripped from One Ring is One Ring has a mechanic, very different game, but it has a mechanic called useful items. So if you've ever watched Lord of the Rings, those characters are going on an adventure. It's long, it's arduous. They pack light. There's only so much that they bring with them. A useful item could be like rope. It could be a cask of ale, or a cask, a bottle of ale, or it might be like maybe like a brooch that's like of elven design, even though you're not an elf. And those useful items are meant to do they do something very similar to this, where they give you a benefit to a check that you're making, a non-combat check, if it makes sense for the narrative. And I loved that idea so much because it was so small, but has the potential to make your stuff matter, and also give permission to the GMs. Giving permission to something, I think that's a design ethos that I really am kind of baking into a lot of this game, mostly because I have problems. So when I GM an encounter, as an example, I'll go into it and say like, okay, well, they're this level character, which means that they're probably going to be able to fight this level mob. It's like, okay, they're going to fight an Aboleth, which they'll probably have a hard time. It'll give me some time to like pull the Aboleth's cool tricks, and then they walk into that encounter and just like smite, take a dump all over it. One of my failings as a GM is that I feel like I've already set the stakes. I know what its health is supposed to be. I will feel like I'm fudging if I increase the health pool. Ultimately, it's you should be looking to the fun that your players are having, and they would have wanted me to extend that encounter. I spoke with them after the fact. They would have been totally cool with like, yeah, give it another 100 health points. But in that moment, I default to like, okay, what are the rules? What was my goal? Well, I got to play it straight because I don't want to cheat. So I haven't been given enough permission to tweak things. So I bake in a lot of permission to create, or to kind of like allow you to bend the rules a little bit. And it's written right into the game. The health pools, just as an example, all of our monsters have alternate health pools, and it says very specifically, if your characters are ripping through a monster or like your encounter too fast, use the alternate health pools, because that's meant to escalate them to like another tier, or rather like make things more difficult. And the way that you explain it narratively is like, okay, they just saw one of their friends, or like the monsters saw one of their friends get shredded. Now they're enraged, and they're going to fight harder. Very easy way to explain how the circumstances of the encounter are different. And we give you explicit permission to do that in this game. So yeah, just kind of going into some of my design ethos, but you'll see some of that in here. So contacts are another thing. Through your background, you may have gotten some contacts. We showed you like a criminal contact and aristocratic contact. A contact is a person who has had a significant impact on your life to the point where it's shaped some of your being. The way that you develop a contact is very similar to a background. You roll through a table. You just roll through once in each column and then see what you end up with. There's three main components of a contact. The first is that they need to be able to help your characters, or rather help propel your character story forward. The contact can provide something of value to your character, and then your character can reliably pursue interactions with them. Doesn't mean they're always available, but it means you can always try to find them. So this is roughed out first by the player, and then you talk to your GM and say like, okay, this is what I ended up with. This is what I'm thinking. Can we work it into the game? And in this way, instead of having a this is old school, and I didn't actually watch this stuff, but I've heard about it. In Critical Role Campaign 1, there was a character named Tiberius, I think. And late in the game, they were the person who played it did like a lot of things where they're just kind of like reaching, and late in the game there was like some sort of situation where he's like oh, just call my I don't know if it was like the king or like my dad or whatever, and have them bring in the army and whatever it was. Again, I didn't watch it. It was so profoundly uncharacteristic of like the situation that had already been cultivated that it made no sense. Even if you were like, if you had some powerful contacts, like why didn't you rope them in further or sooner? Why are you bringing this up now? So we kind of like lay the groundwork right at the start and say, these specifically are the important people that you want to incorporate into this campaign. And by providing this permission to the GM, it says like, okay, this is what your player has. Let's work that in, because it's important to, or rather, this is a legitimate mechanic that exists within the game. Again, it's just providing permission to work collaboratively with your GM without creating those surprises, without reaching for something that you maybe shouldn't. Actually, to sum it up, I would say that a lot of these mechanics help you create social contracts with your players, as it relates to their characters. Anyway, so we'll say that we got an aristocratic contact. We roll it up. It's like, oh, okay, they're a famous performer. So maybe like a dandelion character. Then we roll it up again. Okay, maybe they're known to be cruel. You're like, oh, okay. So don't tick this person off. We roll it up again, and maybe like, okay, they can start a war. So, like, yeah, they're probably like a celebrity, not just locally, but maybe throughout the kingdom. Maybe they are just kind of known to flex their authority to either get what they want, or maybe they have a secret. So when you think about starting a war, maybe, actually, if it was like Dandelion, just as an example, I could totally imagine that character sleeping with like a, king's daughter or something, or some like local, regent, and then causing a bunch of problems just because of that promiscuity. So that could be just what you end up with, and you design that, and then you give it to the GM, and you work together to make it make sense for the campaign. So when you play through, you can pursue contacts with those, with your contacts. A bunch of different options that you would have achieved through backgrounds. Classes are super specific in Distal. I say specific, but they're based in the world. So they try to add something or be centered around some sort of lore. A Justicar, for example, is like very paladin-like, but they are kind of just the enforcers of some of the religious institutions throughout the distal plane. And it's Justicar, but a lot of the different cultures would call them different things. So this is just you wouldn't necessarily be like a Justicar if you were a dwarf, and you wouldn't necessarily be protecting the same sorts of values and and certainly not the same gods necessarily, or the same sorts of institutions, because your culture would be different. Functionally, the classes they're all over the board as far as like play types in the different fantasies that we're trying to fulfill. I view Elementalist as like a little bit witchery, because they have blasts, elemental blasts that they can use, but they're very martial. Or you can play them like, like Avatar, Last Airbender sort of style. And that would totally be up to you. Falconers are rangers. Cutpurse is very, it's a rogue, but you can play them very scrappy, kind of like a thug, and which means that you can spec them into kind of tanking for your party. It just depends on what they have equipped, what develop, or how you develop those characters. Jester is very bouncy, kind of like a hybrid caster, but uses a bag of tricks to fund the spells. Oh, Henry says that they were always monk-like in his mind. Yeah, I could totally see that. I think outside of Avatar, I can't actually think specifically of any, examples. But when you look at Kung Fu in general, there's a lot of animal arts, but there's also a lot of the use and representation of different elements within different katas and opinions and that sort of thing. So I could totally see that. Though I do definitely want to make a sort of a more specific monk class, but at the same time, also really I think a pugilist would be super fun. I mean, they're kind of the same thing. It's just flavor, right? But the flavor is important. And that's one thing that I try to get across, is there's different directions to go, like a ferryman. Now, I keep going back to this class because it's so much fun. But a ferryman is somebody who's seen death before, or seen death and then come back from the planes beyond. And you can play them like a gravedigger. You can play them kind of like a necromancer. You can play them like creepy Pied Piper. The class supports all these sorts of different play styles. So anyway, just to give you an example. So if I go down to a lot of stuff has been redone, by the way. So if you've created a character class in previous versions, or a character rather, it's probably worth going through again, because we've changed a lot, and a lot of this is due to feedback that I've gotten that was really insightful and super helpful. For example, the elementals used to have lay shaping as a separate proficiency, and then they'd have to level that up in order to use their blasts. But now it's just okay, well, if you have an imbued weapon, which you will, it's just going to use your weapon proficiency, because it's going to act as a spell focus. And then that will allow you to just use your weapon proficiency to cast the elemental blasts. So it's very, things are a lot tighter for a number of the classes, and things should play a lot better. Not that they played bad to begin with. I thought we're doing pretty good, actually. As far as games go, this is, I mean, okay, well, I'm a little bit biased, but based on testing, it works fine. But it can always be a little bit tighter, which is the making of a joke, certainly. So, all right. So if I'm playing a cut purse, like a rogue-like character, I'm going to get a tripwire that I can place. People can be knocked prone just by like falling over it, which allows me to be sneaky. I have a dagger twist, which will allow me to, even when the situations don't call for it, I can backstab people, which is, backstab is actually a property on the weapons, or on certain weapons, but it requires specific conditions. So a cut purse can kind of bypass those conditions. And then at level 3, you'd like pick what kind of cut purse. And this isn't a subclass because every 3 levels, you get different options. So at level, man, I really wonder if MCDM is going to go this direction too, because I heard them talking about some stuff. And I was like, that sounds like mine. I'm really looking forward to that game, but we'll see how it turns out. So like a strafing cut purse would be for people who want to focus on mobility, and they always want to be able to get their, well, I guess now that it'd be like getting their backstabs off, or being able to slink back into the shadows after being kind of like in your face. A disparaging cut purse, they can make like verbal assaults. So you're moving into like more bard territory by, this is like, so check this out. As a technique, which is like a bonus action, you make a spell attack using your influence to hit a humanoid target. Actually, this is going to be using your influence to hit. I think that's going to change. Anyway, I need to get to the cut purse and update it to modern standards. But anyway, and then on a hit, they take some sonic damage. And then additionally, this ability can be used as a reaction if the target falls prone. So there's synergy with tripwire. Like, okay, somebody falls on their face, you can make fun of them and then cause damage from that way. And then as far as action economy is concerned, being able to do a ranged attack with a reaction that uses like a spell type damage, that's pretty significant. So anywho, so there's different ways to play. You know, if you want it to be really scrappy, or like you can play the assassination, and you have your like poison sort of stuff right here. You can play in your face and kind of debilitating the enemy, which if you, this one allows you to, if you stick somebody with a dagger, you can just leave that dagger inside of them and they'll have -2 to their defense, which makes so others can kind of gang up on them, make it easier. And then if that character is affected by your debilitating pain, when you take damage, you can expend a willpower die just to shake off the damage, which is very strong. So you can be a tank, but the way that you tank compared to other classes, like compared to like strategist, which is more of a warrior class, is going to be drastically different. And inviting that sort of possibility is something that I'd love to do in character classes. Let's move on down to, let's see, what else is new? There's so much new. Okay, the way that attributes, verbal abuse, yeah, exactly. Everybody hates that douchey little kid who's just talking smack. And like, they always try to they just have to get in the last word. You could be that. Let's see. So attributes, we have 5 attributes instead of 6. Because I didn't really want to deal with a charisma sort of equivalent. I don't know, like it makes sense for that particular game, but doesn't really jive with the experience that we're trying to create here. So the main thing that changed, and this is probably for you, Henry, is that the attributes of character creation are now So at level 1, so there's no more primary, secondary attributes. You just, at level 1, add 3 points. Or rather, you choose 3 separate attributes to increase by 1 point. And then at every level, except for 4, 8, and 12, and it'll make sense later, you're going to get 1 more attribute point to put into stuff. However, when you put a point into an attribute, that attribute becomes plateaued. So if you put a point into strength, you're not going to be able to put another point into strength, not until you clear your plateaus. And then so at levels 4, 8, and 12, which 12 is the max, your plateaus clear, so you can start gaining points again. Which the reason that that's the case is I could have made it so like, oh no, you're only going to get stat bumps at 4, 8, and 12, and that's it. But I have a hard time reconciling why you should gain power so suddenly. And it's a game. It's just difficult to... I think I shouldn't say difficult. I think that it feels better if characters are kind of like training themselves over time. So what I ended up with was much like if you're like in the gym, you're lifting weights, you hit a plateau where at some point you're going to need to break that plateau in order to create any progress. Because at that point, when you're plateaued, you're just maintaining, or you're going the other direction. Kind of sort of a vaguely similar concept with the attributes here. So at 4, 8, and 12, those are called milestone levels. Granted, 12 is going to be something special because there's no level after 12, so clearing plateaus doesn't really make sense. But anywho, and what this will do is it'll create a distribution, like a skill distribution, that allows you to, like at level 9, is going to be the first point where you can, I think it's level 9, which is where you'll have a maxed out stat. So it's fairly late in the game. But your stats, like you'll definitely have some weaknesses. You'll definitely have some strengths because of the initial points that through your lineage and then the attributes kind of help set you up for. We'll see how it goes. I was walking through different variants of this so much over the past few days, and I think I kind of like this one. So, willing to test. Aside from that, oh, hey, Evangelist, thank you. Let's see. Choose a bloodline. Okay, so a bloodline is basically when you pick a lineage, you could have come from different backgrounds or different. This doesn't represent different cultures one to one, but it lets you imagine how your character could have been shaped. So maybe if you're if you're an elf, and then you choose unnaturally quiet, it's because you're from a tribe that focused on like hit and run tactics, maybe. Or maybe if you're like a bow runner elf, maybe you were like a scout. That was what you were really trained in. And maybe you're like a courier, from village to village, sending messages. So it allows you to kind of, it gives you mechanical benefits, but there's a little bit of flavor there that you can latch onto. You could take it or leave it. You could just embrace it for the mechanical side, of course. So you choose one of these bloodlines depending on your lineage, and then we jump into preparing for adventure. So this is really, it used to be called prepare for combat, but this is so much more streamlined than the old document used to be, or this page rather. But a few different things changed. So first of all, everybody gets a pack now. A pack is where you stow equipment. Stow is it becomes mostly inaccessible or not easily accessible. And then everybody also has a holster. So your holster holds your weapons and then a few tiny items. So you imagine like belts and scabbards and that sort of thing. Right at the start, you get an adventurer's pack, which if I scroll down just a little bit, that's this right here. Has some benefits to it. It's free. And as an action, like it has a lantern that you can light up, and it just stays on, and then you can douse it. There's a little bit of extra pack space where you can stow stuff in it without without taking on burdens, which are penalties that can stack up and eventually slow you down. And then there's different kinds of packs. So this is all new. Some of these used to be kits, and they were like separate items that used to be like a medicine kit, and you'd use charges of it and heal people up, or you'd stabilize people or what have you. This is now just like, if you're wearing the healer's pack, you gain certain actions that you can use to, like stabilize people in combat. There's no more charges. And during periods of downtime, you can like heal people up. And the healing in particular is a little bit different too. So again, this used to be charges from a medicine kit, and then you just like throw a bunch of health at people. But it felt, I think Pathfinder does that. Like you'd have a healing wand and you're like, how many charges we got? I don't know, just keep just use all the charges in the wand. How many wands do we got? Instead, triage, this is an ability that over the course of a minute, you're going to heal somebody up past their bloodied state, and then a little bit extra based on your skill. So bloodied is a condition that just means you're at 50% health. I heard it came from 4E, but I feel like it's older than that. And bloodied is used, like the Berserker makes use of that condition a lot. There's some other like conditions that you can, it's mostly like a trigger. It doesn't actually do anything to you. It doesn't make you worse at fighting or whatever. It just marks your 50% health threshold. So at the very least, when you're out of combat, if somebody's super jacked up, you're going to bring them up to half health and then a little bit more. And that's where you're going to start the next fight, unless you have, spells to heal up. I used to have potions, totally ripped the potions out. There's no more potions in the game. So there's actually no consumables. And I felt like that streamlined things a little bit because of these mechanics. Does it make sense in the world? I don't know. It's a magical world. You kind of have to rationalize that, yeah, there's probably some potions that exist. Or maybe because of the nature of the magic, you just can't bottle it. I don't know. You can make up all sorts of different excuses, but these mechanics feel really tight, and they focus more on getting you up to, like if you take a really bad combat, you're not going back to full, but you'll still have some juice to keep going. And that's the goal. The setting is meant to be grounded, but not gritty. And what that means is that unlike D&D, where it's a very heroic narrative, unlike MCDM's RPG, where it's a very heroic narrative, they want to make you feel awesome and powerful and just like crush all the things and fight evil and whatever. This is more like, make smart decisions. You're a skilled warrior or adventurer, but you're not invulnerable. So that's what we're going for. Henry says, it seems like it's always obvious which pack goes with your class. I kind of wonder if that's the case. I think that what you'll see is that you'll always have somebody with the healer's pack, which will be, good, especially for people who like just want to specialize in aid and medicine. You can say like, okay, they have the healer's pack, and they don't need to be a class that's a healer. In fact, it probably makes sense for them not to be. Like they might be the ones who, like your healer might be the ones who are like mending your armor because maybe they just need space for an extra small one-handed weapon. I don't know. But this one's pretty obvious. Like, okay, if you use ranged weapons, then this is probably, or if you have like a bunch of weapons in general that you're trying to like manage, this is probably a good pack for you. And then somebody who, if you're going on adventures in the winter or whatever, being able to climb things, this one's probably more conditional than anything else because it gives you cold protection on expeditions and stuff, but also lets you like climb walls, and then you can leave behind rigging for the rest of your party. And throughout all of these packs, they're meant to provide a, well, I say all of them, but this one probably not so much. They're meant to provide some sort of party benefit so that you can kind of feel good about diversifying. Yeah, Henry. I would say like if you have a ferryman, you might even not want to take a healer's pack at all. Maybe. I guess it really depends. But this one definitely, I feel like this has the most value of any pack, which kind of bothers me a little bit, because it's going to be like, okay, always have it. And I don't know how I feel about that, because I want it to be a choice. And when the choice is too obvious, then it's not really a choice, is it? But let's go back. So after you grab your adventurer's pack, and that just kind of introduces you to what packs are, but you're going to choose weapon proficiencies. So you will have picked up at the very least 2 weapon proficiencies from your background. Weapon proficiencies are archetypical or archetypal, which means that if you pick up the axe's proficiency, you'll be able to use hatchets, you'll be able to use battle axes, you'll be able to use halberds, you'll be able to use war picks, because they're all tagged as axes. If you want to use, all the great weapons, you can just pick up the great weapon proficiency. And then your proficiencies are going to be leveled up independently. So at every level, you can engage in martial development and kind of rank your proficiencies up. So if you have multiple proficiencies, you'll have to make some choices, but you're also going to hit a cap pretty quickly. And that's intentional too. The progression in this game is, in some areas, it's compressed. And then in other areas, there's like class in particular, and then also probably like weapon crafting. That's where like some of the depth comes in. But so you pick up your weapon proficiencies. Let's purchase our starting items. So you will at the very least have, well, I guess a handful of low priced or mid priced items, and then maybe some gold. And that's all like, if you want to, so you pick up the long blade proficiency. And then if you wanted a longsword right out the gate, it would be a medium priced item. So you would, you'd spend, I guess, your mid-price item on this longsword. And then if you wanted some armor, which, okay, I reorganized things, sorry. So if you came down and tried to grab armor, and that armor was also like mid-priced, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, I need to start with something earlier. A low-price item. Oh no. This is the wrong color. Oh no. Got to fix it. Ah. Okay, crisis averted. Okay. Let's see what else. Okay. And then all of your equipment in this game have required attributes. So if you have 1 dex, you can use a gambeson. If you don't, then you could still equip the gambeson, but you're not going to get any of the benefits from it. So in order to slip into some of the more involved equipment, you'll need to have higher stats. So hybrid weapons and armor, this says 3 strength and dex. Basically, you need a combination. You need at least 1 in each stat, and then you need a combination of that that's greater or equal to 3. So I can have 2 strength, 1 dex, or 2 dex, 1 strength, and I'd be able to use scale mail. Yeah, and then the last thing, is it still the wrong color? Don't say that. Don't say that. No, it's based on the cost. So yeah, low is light blue. Oh, it is low. I was looking. Okay, so it was right. Well, egg on my face. I was looking at the medium down here, but this is a medium size, not a low cost. Shame on me. I had it right the first time. Thank you. Yeah, so if we go back to our, and you know, this is the part of the document where you're kind of jumping around because you're shopping, essentially. But it talks about, you know, your low price items, your mid price items, the gold, and then the requirements. Ideally, I think you read this entire page before you move on, but it's kind of weird because there's steps. It talks about requirements, like if you're untrained, there's penalties for being untrained in equipment. No, Marco, you're all good. Thank you. Okay, so if we move on to, so past all the items and equipment, move on to final checks. Actually, we don't really need to dig into this too much because it just like says like, okay, there's some things that you may have missed on your character sheet. Fill those in. And then some of this needs to change, like rolling for health. You don't do this anymore. Boop, it's gone. You're watching development in real time. So the way that health works now, and because this is correct, health is tiered. And it used to be like, okay, you hit level 2, you get health. You hit level 3, you get health. You hit level 4, you get health. It was, the health inflation was too high. And it also, the way that I do monsters is their health is already tiered. So it made sense to like tier the player's health too. Because when you hit level 4, you're basically fighting, like you're fighting harder monsters at that point. I mean, you don't have to, but you probably should, right? You should be taking on adventures that are more, even though it's not meant to be a heroic narrative, there's still progression. So unless you're just like hanging out making money, which if you want to do that, there's a profession system. It's very, very simple. And then why do you exist, right? So we would say that there's going to be some sort of campaign escalation, and that's what's going to drive you to become a better fighter, pursue greater opportunities, because hopefully your characters have some sort of ambition that they need to resolve. So at level 4, you're going to jump up and get more health. Okay, so I'll start again. Your lineage has a health die associated with it. Most of them are D8s. Your health at level 1 would be the maximum, so 8 times 2, 16, plus your class bonus. Classes have anywhere from a +1 to a +3. So if I was a berserker, it would be a +3. So if I was, like a Kinsguard berserker, I would be 16 plus 3, 19 health. And then at the next level, or at level 4 rather, you'd get another health bump. This is, you get more health at early levels so that there's a little bit more flexibility with the types of encounters that you're taking on. You don't really risk just getting one shot by something, which is something that's a problem that you have in D&D, where the GM just overtunes an encounter a little bit. There's like no coming back, because you can get crit once and then you just fall over. So to resolve some of those issues, we adjust the baseline health to be about equivalent to the upper end of a two-handed weapons damage, so that if you got hit by one, you'd have to take another hit to fall over. And then at level 4, this is a milestone level. This is a milestone level. This is a milestone level. This part of the document still needs work, but you'll go up another 8 if you have a D8, and then you get the class bonus again. And then you go up another 8, get the class bonus again. Go up another 8, yada yada yada. Hi, Koki. Koki? Koki. Yeah, so that, and overall, when I was looking at the numbers, it made the values way more manageable, so that I didn't have to like really lay on the damage at higher levels, because it's very difficult to balance that sort of escalation when it's so dramatic. Like in this game, you can have characters who have a... What do you mean, Koki? How do I pronounce it? Is that it? Higher HP might just lead to DMs tuning the monsters up to make them challenging again. Yeah, so one of the parts that I've always struggled with in D&D is when the modifiers start getting really high. Oh, okay. I got you. Okay, cool. Thanks, Marco. Koki. Can I call you? I'm just gonna call you Koki. This is going on for longer than it should. But I also want to know how to pronounce it. Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, but looking at higher level monsters in D&D, you're always kind of like put in a situation where you have to figure out how... Okay, so first off, how many resources your party's going to have, because if they're going into that fight full and they have like, a bunch of characters that are laying it on thick, just dumping the damage, then you kind of like, you have to wrap your encounter around it. But if they enter that situation where they're not at full, then you can have, that opposite problem where maybe they've already wasted their good resources, their third level spell slots or whatever. And I feel like compressing the health pools a little bit helps prevent you from having to inflate your monsters' health pools, their modifiers, the fact that there's like legendary resistances and stuff. I mean, I guess that solves a different problem, but all of that power expansion is so rampant in D&D that it's cool sometimes. There's a lot of diversity there, oftentimes. And at the same time, having something that's just like a little bit tighter, easier to understand, and feels easy to construct encounters with is something that I was really going for. So we'll see how that turns out too, kind of as testing continues, but all this stuff's all outdated now. Okay, don't look at this entire table. I need to change it. Just kidding, I'm gonna keep that up. But I've been working on this document nonstop. There's so much that's changed. Specialties are like every 2 levels you'll get a specialty. These are basically feats. Not too much to talk about. There's a lot of cool stuff that allows you to diversify character and kind of like take on different builds or different approaches. There's even like rewards for kind of sort of dying via certain feats. Death Pact as an example. We'll probably get into death marks later. And then a lot of this document I haven't touched since before. So let me just find a cool thing that did change, since we're supposed to be just sharing some of the changes in this particular version. Okay, so just to introduce it, Willpower, actually some of this is going to need to be deleted too. Again, I'll get there. So all of your characters, when they enter combat, gain a Willpower die. And every class has a different size die. but a willpower die makes it so, we talked earlier about adding that to your chance to hit. Same thing can be done for if you are trying to resist, or rather avoid, escape, curtail, whatever, an incoming negative effect. Then you, if you don't make it, if you fail it, you can use your willpower and then try to roll. But that pool of willpower is very limited. So at the beginning of combat, everybody gets one. There's some feats. There's like there's a feat called, or a feat specialty called Bard Work that allows you to play an instrument, and then anybody who has an empty willpower pool, you can bump that up by 1, but only once per combat. And so that's that bard kind of coming in clutch to give everybody that stroke of genius and help them push through the encounter. But you have to spec into it. And then you also have to have an instrument for people who want to play that, live that fantasy. And then when I wrote non-trash mob, I don't know if this needs to be the case, but basically when a hostile combatant dies, then you get a willpower. Everybody in your party does. And then you kill another one, get another willpower, kill another one, get another willpower. But you can never have more willpower than your party size. So if you're playing with only 3, like a party of 3, that's your maximum. Playing with a party of 4, that's your maximum. Playing inside of an army, please don't do that. Not what the game is for. I mean, you can do it if you want, that's fine. But the purpose of the willpower die, it fuels some abilities. Like some abilities can kind of play off of willpower, but what it's really intended to do is help you close out combat. It's to help you, when people start dying, then you can kind of like, you ever been in combat and then there's like a cleanup phase where you've basically killed everybody, but there's a couple more that are going to die at some point. It's just like, just kind of have to roll. MCDM, they resolve this by like assigning a remaining combatant to every party member, and then just like, okay, describe how you kill the enemy. Very cool, very thematic. Also not something that I'm interested in this game, but there still needs to be a way to close out the encounter. The enemies could flee. People who want to live usually do that, or they don't start stuff to begin with. But using your willpower to make sure that you hit is a good way to clean things up, and then you kill them, and then you get another willpower, and then you can kind of like, it builds momentum. Has a potential to build momentum. Is the willpower limit cap for the whole party or the individual? Can a party have 4 in total, or is everybody? Oh, it's individual. And actually, that's a really good point. I need to clarify that because it's not the first time that I've heard that question. I use the word pool when I probably shouldn't, because it makes you think like it's shared between your party. And then when it talks about party size, that also kind of alludes to it being shared, but it's not. It's an individual resource. Yeah, I'll have to think about how to phrase that. I kind of want to make a note. I'm gonna fix the verbiage. There we go. Cool. Yeah, and then there's some penalties too. Like if you begin dying, so if your allies or you fail to do something, then you lose all your willpower. And while you're dying, you can't gain more willpower. And then at the end of combat, it goes back to 0. Willpower is strictly a combat resource. Cool. Let's talk about death. So, dying in this game. You can fall over, begin dying, go unconscious, and your soul will begin to kind of try to leave its body. It will lose its connection to you as like a character. And the way that we convey this is through death marks. So there are a certain amount of death marks that you can have against your character before you die forever. The death mark maximum is 5 plus character level plus fortitude. So if you keep leveling your character, there's still going to be more opportunities for you to not die forever. But and then there's like, if you pick up Death Pact, it also like bumps your which is a specialty. It'll also bump this up by 5, give you more opportunities for life. Actually, does Death Pact still do that? I should probably check. But the point is that eventually, if you're worn down enough, you're dead. Excuse me. And you receive another death mark when, for each round that you go without being stabilized. Because again, your body is and your soul are like tearing apart. And if your allies can stabilize you, either by rolling to aid you with actually the healing kit. So anybody can aid at this point. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Yeah, anybody can aid except a healing kit. What it does is it adds the medicine. So it makes it so like your chances of stabilizing somebody go up. So maybe it's not as super relevant. Maybe it's not the end all, the winning pack, but maybe it is for reasons that we'll get into later. But and then when you become stabilized, so you're either healed or you're aided, and you're no longer dying. You're stabilized. Still going to take you a few rounds to wake back up, open your eyes, get ready to fight again. That's death marks, minus fortitude, minimum of 1 round, but a maximum of 5. The maximum of 5 thing is something that changed recently because, quite frankly, if you have 10 death marks, are you really going to sit there for 10 rounds? No, you're just out of the combat at that point. Even 5 is a stretch. 5 rounds is probably about as long as combats probably should go if they're not moving quickly. So maybe there's a better way to phrase this. Maybe I could just make it like a hard, maybe I'll just make it 5. I don't know, because the death marks thing, like if you play safe, then if you go down, it's like no harm, no foul, because it's only 1 death mark against you or whatever. Anyway, I'm rambling. You also have access to death actions. So when you're dying, and also when you're stabilized but not awake yet, you're not just sitting there doing nothing. In fact, you're looking at your allies and figuring out how you want to help them. Everybody gets a reaction this basically takes the place of your turn, that they can use to assist an ally. So you can if your ally's trying to avoid a negative effect and they don't make the roll, you can use your reaction and roll your die and help give them what's essentially guidance. Anytime during an ally's turn, you can use your reaction to increase their movement by 10 feet. Maybe you're doing that so that they can get to you and aid you. You can protect them. You can buffer damage, which we didn't talk about buffers, but basically it's a counter roll to reduce incoming damage. But ultimately, if you've taken death marks, there's a cost. And this is a new mechanic. We'll have to see how it goes, but a permanent scar is formed. So after the combat's resolved, hey Battenrock, I like your icon. I love Mass Effect. So after the combat, if you've taken a death mark, that's going to permanently scar you in some way. The way that we translate that is by having you cross off a little pip in a skill that you know. So if you're, let's say that you have 3 perception. If you fall down, go sleepy times. And then you, after that combat, you're stabilized, you're back up, but you've already incurred a death mark. You have to go into your character sheet and, you can choose what skill to cross off, but we're going to cross off one of our perception. You're never going to be as perceptive as you were. Maybe we translated it as like the, just that sort of necrotizing flesh, or maybe you just got a visual or like a tangible scar, physical scar over your eye, and now you can't see as well. However you narratively want to describe that, that's up to you. But we said you had 3 perception, now you have 2. If you want to increase your perception by just like learning it, you can. You can bring it up to 3 again, because you still have that 4th pip that is unscarred. But that's basically the scar, because there needed to be something detrimental about a death mark than just kind of a tally mark on your character sheet. And this is where it currently lands. One benefit though is that when you may have lost a skill, but you'll gain 1 health point or 1 maximum health. So much like scar tissue protects, I don't know if it really protects your body, it like hardens, certainly makes it so you can't feel anymore. Death marks can kind of be like that as well, where the more scars you have, the hardier, hopefully less likely, you will be to go down again. But you've also lost that piece of you that you can't get back. Reviving characters, can't do it. Revives don't exist in this game, but they could if you want to, and we talk about that here too. The ability to clear away death marks or revive characters altogether should be considered optional by the GM. Allowing players to do either of these things would likely come at a steep cost and can be used to help balance the gold economy at later levels. That was past me when I was thinking that things were going to be more inflated, but you have to see how that goes too. Yeah, there's no revival spells in the system currently, but given that this is a magical world, it makes sense that you could have somebody who's practicing ways to bring the soul back to the body, so where maybe that could make sense. But we don't entertain that thought in particular. There's some stuff about companions. Actually, companion rules got streamlined too. Let's see. Okay, so much stuff here that I kind of want. So those like burdens and carry capacity, all this stuff got changed. So by default, you can hold 3 hands worth of equipment. Or so like weapons, shields, a ranged weapon in your holster. Your pack is separate. Your pack is where you stow items for travel. Your holster is what you have readily available. Some packs, as we saw earlier, have a holster built in. So instead of just sword, shield, hand crossbow, you could have sword, shield, bow. If there's like another, if one can carry a like a medium 2-handed weapon. So it comes at cost. What this does is it's certainly restrictive. We could probably allay any concerns about weapon swapping by just turning this to 4. But instead of doing that, this kind of imparts it forces you to make a choice, basically. What kind of character are you? What weapons are you most likely to wield? And then and then what's your backup weapon, basically? Like, so if you have a bow, your backup weapon is probably, a dagger or a short sword or something like that. Which, when you think about Legolas, Aragorn, they don't have all that much on them. It would be just like, yeah, you have a bow and you have a sword. And that is the sort of mentality that I wanted to bring into this, while also leaving the option of expansion for players who want to kind of, or characters, I guess, who want to dip into some of the other packs that are currently available. And then burdens, this is a new system. Basically what it is like you can always carry, or like a few small stowed objects in parts of burden. So small is a size, like, okay, it's a short sword or a bedroll or a sling. A few of those, try to stuff them into a pack, it's going to be a little unwieldy. Every medium object stowed in parts of burden. So like if you're trying to stick your great axe on your pack, it's just going to be weird. You know, your longsword, your shield, if you're just going to put it on your pack, it's going to be weird. You can't stow it. If you have a holster, you can like strap it, but you can stow it. It's just like, it just imparts a burden. And you can have a certain amount of burdens. All the characters can. But what it does is it limits you, so you're not like carrying 7 swords, because that's excessive. Don't need that. 5 pole arms. It's so much. Why? Stop it. So burdens is kind of a way to do that. That being said, you have a number of burdens, like your lineage determines how many burdens you have. So dwarves can carry the most. They can carry 5 burdens. That's before they get any penalties. They would get encumbered at 6. So they can still be ridiculous, probably. But they're also, so there's certain weapons, like all of the great weapons now have what's called the cumbersome property. So even if you're carrying it in your hands, it's still so heavy that it imparts a burden. Typically wielded weapons don't. And then there's some heavy armors, like plate mail and stuff, that also impart a burden. If you're little tangle folk, it's a little halfling / hobbit style character, you only get 2 burdens. That's it. Which means that if you want to wear plate mail, that's 1 burden. If you want to wear plate mail and then a polearm, it's going to be 2 burdens, just because those are both cumbersome items. Which means that whatever you put in your pack, it should be, you're probably going to need a pack light. So you're not going to be the one that's picking up all the loot and like hoarding it in your pack, because that'll make things difficult for you. But anyway, I thought this was, we'll have to see how it plays out. I thought this was a good way to manage, instead of weight, and instead of doing like inventory slots, it's more kind of like, it still gives you room to play, but you don't need to track each and every like little number and then add them all up together. Oh no, what'd I do? Oh, thank you, Henry. Okay. So small. Man, talking is difficult. So many words. Yeah, so that's a new mechanic. Please let me know what you think about it. I'm hoping that this, there's a bunch left of this document. Actually, I'll power through. Let's keep going. So I scrolled down a little bit, but you know, there's some advice on like how to avoid burdens. So like, yeah, if you want to carry the loot, give it to somebody who isn't burdened. Like you become encumbered when you exceed your burden limit. So for Tanglefolk, that would be 3. because their limit is 2. You become restrained when it's exceeding your burden limit plus 2. So restrained means you just can't move. New mechanics that have come in. This one I've done a whole video about. A good meal with friends. This is a way to reframe the long rest so that everyone is available for a narrative moment, and then you reward them for, or like all the characters doing something to contribute to that time of the night. I'm sorry for hitting the mic. That time of the night where everybody's kind of like resting and becoming heartened and heartened. Happy, merry, lifting morale. By, trying to bond a little bit more, putting to bed your weariness. And it asks each character to just contribute something. Like, what would they do? Would they sing a song? Would they share a secret? Would they cook a meal? And somebody brought up a Darkest Dungeon camping skills. I haven't played Darkest Dungeon. I should, though. It always intrigues me when I watch it. Well, now I really want to play it. Okay. There's probably some really good stuff in there. Let's see. But the goal is to kind of give you that narrative rest. If you have a party who is really mechanical, they're probably not going to want to do this every time. But you don't need to have like that narration every time. You could say you could ask them what they're doing, because it has to make some level of sense. Because if you're in a desolate environment, or if you're in a snowstorm, how are you finding solace? It needs to be explained somehow. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to go into great detail and force the role play. But asking characters, even mechanically, what they're bringing to the table is a good way to allow the characters to express their skills outside of combat. Let's see. So some tangible things that happen. Okay, I have some verbiage in here for major downtimes and minor downtimes, but I didn't follow through with it, so this needs to be cleaned up. I still need to figure out where I land on this, but basically, this is your long rest. It's also when you level up. So if you've received a level, it doesn't happen until the next morning. The rules that I stated before, it wasn't necessarily the case, but I figured this, when it's done narratively like this, it might make sense, because you're meditating on your past experiences, and that's hopefully helping forge you into the person that you're becoming. Downtime activities like repairing armor or healing people up, that sort of thing. If you have a healing kit, what's this? What's going on here? If you have a, what did I do to this poor sentence? Hold on. You can conduct one major downtime activity. Let's see. Repairing armor. Yeah, okay. I was also in between on this. Let's see. Fix me. And then so the way that healing is done has changed too. It's way more stingy than it was. Basically, your natural recovery. So you go to sleep. Okay, fine. You receive the maximum value of your health die plus your fortitude. When it's a good meal with friends, you double it. That's it. So way simpler. Before there was are you rested? Are you well fed? Because you need to be well fed to be rested. And it was just a little bit too nitpicky. And there was okay, are you exhausted? And I didn't think we needed all that. So basically, it's just like, okay, during sleepy times, you're going to get the maximum value of your health die back, which is going to be less than, because it used to count per hour before. So now if you, well, the health is compressed a lot more now too. So basically, you should be good. Like at level 1, your health is only 2 times your health die maximum plus your class bonus. So chances are, unless you're like at 1 health, you're going to be back to full. But this is not going to scale when you level up. So even though you're becoming more skillful as an adventurer, and we translate that to more health, it's not necessarily translating to the recovery. So you can be more daring and risk more of your life, but your periods of rest are probably going to be longer because of it, which is, to me, seems a little bit more grounded. Now, what that does from the mechanical side, though, it might have some unintended repercussions. Like if you're expecting a party to be like, okay, encounter, long rest, boss fight. If you're expecting that sort of operation, then you're probably going to be in a situation you don't like. But maybe not. I don't think it'll be so bad, because even with a medical kit, you're still bringing people past, or healing kit, you're still bringing people past the bloodied, which is half their health. So if you're going to sleep, you're already at your half your health, and then whatever you get past that is going to be, you're going to recover a lot, unless you're just like slumming it, where if you're extreme weather, for example, now it just like doesn't let you have a good meal with friends because you're literally getting pelted with ice. So or like heat, it's like, yeah, no, you're everything sucks. Or downpour, just awful rain. When you're dealing with these effects and not shielded from them, then you are, you're not going to have that restful period of sleep. So I think that's better. I think it'll be pretty easy for people to understand once they run it at least once. Also add another extreme weather type. It's downpour, which you're deafened because it's just like thunderous, loud rain, and it is just making things difficult to actually, oh man, I need to check on the deafened condition. I wonder, are you serious? Do I not have the deafened condition in my, I didn't have blinded either in my conditions? Quick cheat sheet. Quick reference. I don't have deafened in here. Well, now I don't even know what it does now. So it'll make it so you can't hear. What does that do? I think it makes it like people I want to say people you can't see are obscured, but that's already the case. And that's essentially blinded does something similar. Well, all right, we got to figure that out. To be determined, you're deafened. That's good. I'm glad we went through it. Let's see, A, B, C, D. Okay, so we're gonna put in a new slot here. Say deafened, which is of course please make this condition make sense. It might just actually deafen you and make it so you can't hear. And there's very few things in the game right now that make it so you can't, that rely on you being heard. Like a lot of the the strategist's early abilities, like you're yelling at people, or the cut burst, you know, when he's yelling at somebody, they have to be able to hear you. So if they're not going to take your damage. So actually that sounds like a benefit. I want to be deafened all the time. I don't know. Maybe it'll make it so you can't cast sonically. Does that make sense? I don't know. Time to wing it, as you said. Let's see. That was pretty much it. Lots changed. Things still need to be formatted. I kept the foraging rules just because they were fun, but I also don't know if I need them. It'd probably limit communication with the party. Yeah, I agree. Bar type spells. Yeah, I feel like even instruments would be useless. That's a whole weapon type. But is it useless because you can't hear? Because if I want to impose deafened on someone, they should suffer the consequences, is what it feels like. But maybe it's more than that. Let's see. Oh, and then I started down this path of in quiet times, where during a good meal with friends, you would like, the GM could not do this a lot, but like once per session at most. But it should only make sense when it makes sense. You roll on a table, and then something fateful or something interesting happens. And it could give your characters a gift. Like, imagine hearing voices in the middle of the night as you're sleeping in a what felt like a happy, revelrous night of, just camaraderie and relaxation. But you hear these voices, it wakes you up. You look around, there's nobody there anymore. Your campsite's still there, the fire's still burning, warm, you feel it, but your companions are missing. This voice continues to call to you. You wander off into the forest in pursuit, thinking that maybe something happened to your friends. And then when you get there, it's maybe it's like a tree. You hear echoes, and now the voice is calling to you. They shape into ancient words. Words that you know you don't understand, but for some reason can feel the intention of. Maybe this tree, or the spirit that binds it, is calling out for help. Suddenly, you snap awake. And as you open your palms, you're gifted with a small wooden charm that reminds you of the voices that you heard. And you feel it calling you somewhere. I just made that up off the top of my head, but what if that sort of experience was what could happen during these quiet times? Maybe that little curio does something for you when interacting with, like, dryads or woodland creatures, or maybe like ancient entities who speak this forgotten language. It would give you like a side quest potentially, but it wouldn't need to. It could be whatever makes sense for your party. Anyway, so that's a concept that I was toying around with. I was finding it difficult to build it out into like a table. Like, this is where I started. I was like, okay, in quiet moments, like you roll, a character is reminded of a local legend, roll again, involving, spirits of the dead, roll again, and rewards, a clear sky tomorrow. But then it's like, okay, well, that one makes sense. What about, like, how many times can you do this? Is where I ended up, where a character is minding their own business and then involving. I'm using the incorrect word. And that's the issue that I kept running into. Is just like it wasn't meshing in a way that I wanted it to mesh. So it almost felt like it needed to be separate tables, or even like not even a table of prompts, but of larger some sort of instigating event, and then something that's a little bit more fleshed out, and then a reward pool. So I don't know. Just making games. Okay, so that is, I feel like that's most of it. I need to go through, I need to clean up the monsters. I kind of just want to throw it all out. And this is fine. This works. It's fine. But I would love to give the GM tools to create encounters and do so in such a way where it isn't tied to the specific monsters. I almost want to tie it to, like, I still need to figure things out, but I keep coming back to this idea that imagine you want to throw an encounter for your players. What is the one cool, interesting, quirky thing that you could give them, or like challenge them with? Is it do all the monsters speak psychically with one another? Like, are they just connected? Are they or maybe like in the situation, if you don't kill one particular mob, then there's just constantly going to be calling out new mobs. Abilities first generation. Yeah, that's where I'm still living. Is I like that idea, but when I start walking through it, I end up taking more steps than I want to, because it ends up fleshing out like a whole monster, which is not what I really want to do. I don't even necessarily want you to have a husk to then like fill in the things on. I kind of like, I want to start with the abilities. I want to say that these characters are, you give them X many, short, like some of them are going to have short bows, some of them are going to have, the two-handed weapons. And then you already know what the health pools are, because it's very clear cut now that everything is tiered. And I'll have to include that math. I might even just, I don't know. I think something can be done, and I think it can be cool, but I don't want to accidentally create more work for a GM, by having them have to devise every single thing. You could have templates and say like, okay, this monster this is what it's got. But if you do that, then it's like exactly, this is what that is, So I don't know. And then if I was going to just give them tools to create their own monsters, then that feels like a dungeon master's guide, like a separate product. So I'm trying to find that line between giving them tools and doing more work than I should be doing to make this into a product that has value. Speaking of which, I think that is about all I've got. for this. Hopefully you like the way that it's shaping up. There's every time I turn around, it feels like there's more work to be done. You know, like I don't have enough spells, I don't have enough lore, I don't have enough this, that, and the other thing. And at the same time, I don't have enough time. And soon, I will not have enough money. So it's gotten me in a really weird spot. What I think is going to happen, I'm not sure about this. What I think is going to happen is that this edition might release alongside Patreon. And this is going to be free to everybody. But then I think that it's going to be like locked in. Or maybe not even a Patreon. Like maybe I just have to sell the thing after that. But it's not done. But in order to fuel development, yeah, I mean, you're both supporting me and doing what you can. So it's like I'm not, I think I'm just like kind of walking through the steps in my mind of how to get this into people's hands, but also feel confident that it is a whole package. At this point, I've kind of like given up on art. Like art's not going to happen, you know, unless there's some sort of influx of money. But that's like, you know, backer kit, Kickstarter territory, and start Patreon. Yeah, okay, so Henry, here's the thing about Patreon. When I was originally making videos on YouTube, I was doing it to, you know, cultivate a better gaming community. I was like giving something to others that I thought had value. And like I didn't need to make those videos, but I wanted to do that to give. And now I'm on the other side where this project, to me, it feels self-serving. Like I'm not, like, yeah, it'll be cool. Please play it, enjoy it. I think that there's a lot of good stuff here, but at the same time, it's also like, I feel very much like it's more about me. And that's kind of, it's a very uncomfortable question to have to ask myself. You know, when, the soul searching question would be, how much are you giving versus how much is self-serving? And it's very likely it's not like one or the other. It's always a mixture. Well, not always, but because when I like creating this sort of thing, and I want to keep creating this sort of thing. But if I do that, it's like this product doesn't need to exist. There's so much else out there. So is it because of, you know, they're my ideas? I've invested so much of my time. I want people to, you know, to play my thing. It feels very egocentric, and I don't know that I like that. Because that's not something that appeals to me. I just want to like create and, you know, give, like put things into the world. So it's so strange when you also have to eat. This is like, now I feel like this is going to first world problem territories. Very few products need to exist. Well, I mean, you are not wrong. Yeah, I don't know. I get you. I get you, Henry. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I feel so weird about it. It just feels different. It feels very different than what I used to do. You know, I see that there is so much less reach now, just with like on my YouTube videos. You know, I'll put out a video And TTRPG space is certainly more, it's totally smaller than the gaming space. And everything is so cloistered into different subsections that you know, I don't get a lot of pickup on my videos. And I'm actually, I mean, it would take time. Things are moving in interesting direction. I'm still like, sloughing is a really disgusting word, but you're shedding, I guess, a little bit better. My past audience, and I'm seeing the direction shift, but I can also like project that out. And I've already done this before. Like I've already created a channel from scratch, done, you know, something, you know, been unemployed, tried to live off of YouTube. It wasn't working. Like I was kind of making it work thanks to Patreon, but I feel like I was giving more. Koki says, in the past you gave YouTube videos, you gave something instantly. Now it's more an enabler for the future. See what's to come. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. When I put out this next version, what I want to do is get back into the habit of reaching out to other content creators and make it a goal. And I only have I have a couple of months until I'm like, I need to find a different job. Well, find a job. So that's the timeline. It's like there's 2 months. So I've been working my balls off every single day, which is why it's so frustrating, is because I feel like I'm not getting to the places that I want to get. And I know that the direction, I know the trajectory is really low though. And that's the thing that bothers me. So what I'm going to try to do is start talking to content creators just on a grassroots level. And what I want to be, and this is the goal that I'm setting for myself, it's unrealistic, but that's kind of the point, is I want to be the game that a lot of these people are playing. You know, in lieu of, you know, Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons, I need to find the people who are ready for something slightly different. That also means I have to do a lot of work. Like this has a long way to go. And I don't think that it's quite found its calling. I think art certainly helps with that. I have some ideas, but yeah, it's so funny how much you can do with art. When I heard after backing MCDM's project that they were just like, we just have one level, and I'm like, wait, how far along are you guys in development of this thing yet? And I'm like, you guys have been at this longer than I have, and you're now like just getting to the core game loop. I was like, wow, you got a lot of people excited. And I think a lot of it had to do with just the presentation. Not to say anything bad about the product, because obviously it's doing very well. They have testers who are in there, you know, banging on it, which is very helpful. You know, any sort of testing allows you to make those the important decisions. And I was so dumbfounded that they weren't further on, because the way that they talked about it, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to play this. It's gonna be like done and dope. I was like, Jesus. 90% marketing, 10% elbow grease. I wouldn't go that far. They're constantly, I know that they're all very hardworking individuals. It's just that they have a lot of work, and the way that they approach it is differently than I am. Because this is all just like one person, my own mind, right? Tempered by feedback. And for them, they reach out. There's a lot of places that they're touching, and that always slows things down. Yeah. I don't know. All right, y'all. Thank you for hanging out, and also thank you for the continued support. It is very helpful. Um, I don't like, like complaining, especially about the money stuff when you're the ones who are like supporting. Uh, but the intention is to kind of like give you my headspace, because all of that affects the alignment of where things go, right? Like this could very possibly just be like the last version, and that's it. And that's part of the reason why I'm making like so many changes here. Actually, I want to show you my my Google Doc real quick. See if I can not dox myself. Yeah, Henry, the hype building is definitely big, but that's definitely part of it. I mean, in PlanetSide 2, the reason that so the last 2 years in PlanetSide 2 were really, really rough. The last year in particular, and I was infuriated, constantly disappointed in our inability to communicate and gain momentum and keep moving in a singular direction. A lot of my frustrations were focused on like the marketing and the community side of things. I didn't feel like we were really pulling our weight there. And without going into it too much, I felt the rippling impact through that entire year. 2020, 2022, and then that wasn't the first year for it. Like 2021 was when it started getting really rough, and there is so much you can do when you're constantly engaging your player base and keeping them excited for the right reasons, and not just like trying to just hammer them with sales because that's all you got. Having the right sort of timing around the updates that you're putting out and the social posts that you're putting out is all it's a very important fine balance that takes a lot of work. So when it's not being done correctly, it can create problems that aren't immediately evident, but are going to be undercurrents throughout all of what you're doing, kind of as you move through. And it was a very frustrating last couple of years. What was I doing again? Oh yeah. All right, check this out. So, kind of see my bookmarks bar up there. That's fine. Okay, so this was originally going to be called Talon Twine. I think I'm just dropping the monikers now. I like them. I think that they are fun. But so this is my Google Doc where I'm just like stacking up a bunch of the changeless stuff that we didn't even talk about. Ammo die. That's the thing. The returning and recovering properties got changed. Flanking as a mechanic was totally removed. Backstab property now triggers from obscured as well as hidden and invisible because flanking was removed. Investigation goes, changes to deduction. Give back monikers. Yeah, I think we could probably still swing it. Yeah, the downtime mechanics. I'll talk about some of that. Good meal friends, talk about that. Extreme weather. Companions got simplified. Exhausted is removed. Well rested is removed. Blinded was added. A bunch of formatting notes that I took. And then the verbiage of just a bunch of things being cleaned up and changed. And this is like stuff that you guys aren't going to notice, right? Unless it's in a patch note somewhere. And that's if you I don't know. And all of this needs to be cleaned up. And, you know, I was going through all the character creation and cleaning up some of the stuff that didn't quite jive with me there. In organizations, like you can no longer specialize or get paid in food and livestock, as much fun as that is. Worship is what I replaced it with. I like food and livestock. It's hilarious, but I also don't see anybody using it. Changed beginning revolutions, since that was a little bit too specific, to just like espionage, which is a theme that I could see people operating in. Fix some typos, okay. Then a bunch of item stuff got changed. Some of the medium cost items got turned down to low cost items, just so that you can explore some of your lineage stuff at low levels instead of having to just save up. But then for some weapons it didn't really make sense. And then, you know, did some like balancing and stuff. Remove potions altogether. The mage staff was meant to have a spell attack that can be used from range, but I didn't have that in any of the versions that I released publicly. It's in my Google Doc, but it's not. Yeah. The mage staff is supposed to work like it does in Dragon Age Inquisition, where, you know, you're flinging spells or spell magic. Anyway. Oh, I removed like the lightweight property from weapons, since weight is no longer a thing. And then things now have the bespoke benefit, which is fun. It's just a more narrative one, or narrative benefit. And, you know, did some changing around, like did a bunch of stuff with bloodlines because of changes that were made before. A bunch of stuff with specialties, some stuff with spells, including a new spell, and a bunch of class stuff. There's so much class stuff here. And like, this is just the stuff that I do daily, and I'm sure that I don't have a lot of I'm sure that I'm missing some of the patch notes, but man, if my patch notes aren't the biggest in the industry. There you go, biggest patch notes in the industry. Just here for the dialogue. Very nice. Thank you for your service to my favorite shooter of all time. Wish you the best in all the current and future. Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think that's a good note to end on. Thank you all for hanging out and listening to me ramble. I really like developing this stuff. This is my life currently. It's just like sitting down, finding time, and making things hopefully better. I think the game is finally getting to a point where I'm zeroing in on what it's supposed to be. I think there's a ways to go, but once it's like wrapped, I want to let it sit for a while. So a few things that I need to address coming up are, I need to take a look at monsters again. I need to, I don't know if it needs to happen in this update, but I need to unlock all the levels for the classes so that you can see how the progression actually works. The problem is that if my mechanics aren't set, then I'm going to do the same thing that I've been doing for weeks now, where I'll make a systemic change and then have to go through all the classes and change everything to update it. And if I add more levels, then it's just going to make that more difficult. Let's see. And then aside from that, Koki was actually saying that offering some words on what would be helpful for them. Just having either a quick start guide or doing like a solo dungeon, sort of like a solo, you know, this is how you play the game sort of situation. And working on that material, it makes a lot of sense to do that. I hope that this game will be solid enough or stable enough after this update to where I can do that with confidence, because that would, I'm sure that would help a lot of people. Alrighty. Thank you very much, folks. I'll Catch you on the flippity flip.